Hi everybody, my name is Adam Seligman. I'm the Vice President of Developer Experience at AWS, and I'm excited to be here today at GitKon 2024, and I want to talk about reimagining the developer experience and how we're tackling that at AWS with our customers, our developers, and our partners, and some pretty cool new tools. So I wanted to start with sort of a setup that explains why we're here, what makes us tick at AWS, what's motivated us for 15 years of driving the cloud forward with our developer community. And it's really all about empowering developers. Developers can dream big, invent new ideas, solve problems, tackle problems, help their companies tackle existing problems, dream up new concept applications and ideas, create whole new spaces and markets and capabilities that I think we only dream of today, really to fuel innovation. And that's the heart of what we do here is we believe developers fuel innovation. We're a developer-obsessed company. You kind of can't go wrong with APIs and SDKs and killer cloud services and just putting those in the hands of developers so they can really build awesome new things. And that's what makes us tick every day. And our approach at AWS is to be developers' partner on this journey. And really simply, it's about building the tools that developers need. We have to build them in responsible ways, and then also make sure they have the skills they need to deliver results and grow their careers. And I just want you to know, when we think about developers and our whole ecosystem at AWS, we think about their individual careers and the skills they're going to gain, and maybe the certifications they're going to gain, the hard projects they tackle, the lessons learned and battle scars and war stories, but most importantly, the results they deliver. And we recognize that's a journey over a developer's entire career, and AWS wants to be the partner with every developer on their journey. Now, I thought I would take a minute to sort of wrap up some of the things that are not like all the cloud, but the things that developers really care about, the cloud innovations developers really care about. And here's my list. Now, first, we just hit 10 years of serverless compute. And serverless has been absolutely transformative for how developers work with scale to zero, elastic scale up, no infrastructure to manage, and really allow them to tackle whole new kinds of computing problems with patterns like event-driven architectures fearlessly. And also front-end and web development and full-stack apps with our Amplify product line. We had a big release this summer with Amplify Gen 2 that allows developers to work in TypeScript and work on the front end and then spin up back-end features just by adding a TypeScript file to their client side. And Amazon Amplify Gen 2 will take care of all the back-end that they need to fulfill those services and bind data and other features. I think we're all seeing the rise of GenAI features like on our phones and with our toasters and all the places where we interact with technology. And developers want to add GenAI features and learn how to take advantage of this. Our Bedrock offering is our serverless offering for LLMs from all the best companies like Anthropic Claude and Meta's Llama models, Cohere and others, where our developers through Bedrock can use these LLMs serverlessly with really helpful features like guardrails and RAG for retrieval augmented generation, and the ability to call lambdas for tools and other agents securely. This other place that generative AI is impacting developers at a really tactile level right now is really transforming their developer productivity. And one of the things I want to go deep on today, our product there is Amazon Q Developer. But then broadly, since it's GitKon, I also want to talk about DevOps and the new ways Amazon Q is being used, and developers are integrating and building new things with Amazon Q and transforming that whole DevOps flow, not just that inner coding loop. So with that, I thought I would start with some demos and really show you rather than talking at you, and showing you Amazon Q in action and what we mean by transforming the software development lifecycle. So let's start by creating a new Lambda function directly from the AWS console. So the first thing we do is pick a name, and then we pick the runtime. Here we're going to pick Python 3.9, and then the Lambda will be created. And once it's ready, we'll be able to edit the code directly from VS Code embedded right in the console. Now, our idea here is to create a function that returns a random type of sushi, and Q will automatically suggest a line with a bunch of sushi types. That looks good, so let's have it return one at random, and Q suggests the code that I need right there in line. So let's go ahead and deploy the code and then test it. Now I configure the test event with JSON, and I just put it empty because it doesn't need any inputs. And now I should be able to just invoke the random sushi lambda and see the response was in fact a random type of sushi. So that's a pretty super easy way to get started creating Lambda functions right in the AWS console. So now let's transition to local development of our Lambda function. So we're going to start by downloading the code and the SAM template to our machine. So we just open up this zip and then open the project locally in VS Code. Just hit the folder there. And then now I have the resources I need to go develop this and run it locally in a Docker container. So I have my YAML file for my SAM template, and I've got my Python function code. And so what's pretty cool is this local invoke lets me run this locally in a Docker container. And it's going to run the function locally, and I can see the response, including the output, which should have some random sushi in it. And there we go, Inari. So this is pretty cool. So you have everything that you need to transition from getting started in the console to working with local VS Code environment, including a working SAM template that's used for ISE deployments, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's check out some other cool features of Q. Let's try inline chat. So I want to add some new sushi types. I'll just hit Command-I to fire up Q and tell it right there in line to add some new sushi types. And Q will go and process the code and come back with a diff. See, the green is got some additional sushi roll types in there. Looks good. I'll accept that. Now let's look at something more complicated. Let's say I want to add observability metrics to this Lambda. So I'll just hit Command-I and tell Q to add Ollie metrics, that's observability, using CloudWatch. Let's see what it comes up with for this one. So Q will use the Boto3 library, create a CloudWatch client, and add this CloudWatch put metric data to start emitting CloudWatch observability metrics. This is pretty cool. I'm going to remove that try. I don't need any error handling right there. And we've just now, with inline chat, added observability metrics to our Lambda. Pretty cool. Let's look at some other ways that Amazon Q can help us out as a developer. So let's say I just highlight some code. I can pop up this little Q menu, and there's a bunch of capabilities there, like explain, refactor, fix, optimize. Let's try explain. So now what Q will do will read the code and then explain to me what I'm looking at, and explain how that AWS SDK client code works, and how the cloud metrics logging are working. That's pretty cool. Let's look at something more complicated. Let's look at this template YAML file, the SAM template, and let's ask it to add a needed role so we can actually call that metric logging routine. And it'll actually look at our YAML, come up with a specific permission that's going to be needed, and give us a proposed change. I can go ahead and review that, hit copy. I'll just go ahead and replace my code. And then sure enough, you can see it added permission for put metric data for CloudWatch, which is awesome, which is what we're going to need to drive that observability capability. Cool. So another cool innovation I want to show you is how to run full stack apps in AWS the easy way using Amplify. So what I have here is a GitHub repo that's got a React application in it. And I'll connect Amplify to my GitHub repo, and Amplify will do all the deployment for me. It takes about a minute, which is pretty cool. It auto-detects all the things that you need. And after it sets up the connection, it's going to detect the configuration and start deploying the application. So the source is being cloned, the production app is being built, and a publicly accessible web URL is being created. And this is all going to get done in about a minute. Now, what's particularly cool is in addition to all the infrastructure being created, you also get through Amplify a CI/CD pipeline set up, which will enable me to make changes to the code and have those changes automatically be deployed. And of course, you can then set up features like branch deployments, custom domains, databases, file storage, and a bunch of other services that your static or your full stack apps might need. So it's going to wrap up here and do a deployment, and we should be able to see the live public app with the generated URL. Let's check that out. Here goes the deployment. And ta-da! There's our production branch, and there's a link to the live app. Very cool. So one of the reasons we're tackling these problems is we hear from developers, we see this in studies, is that developers, sadly, only actually spend about an hour per day actually writing new code and innovating. And there's lots of other stuff they do that's in part of the SDLC and human communication with other stakeholders that's just not coding and not really adding new feature capability to their applications. So it's kind of shocking. When I talk to developers, it really relates. I think we all wish we could spend more time. So we're trying to figure out here at Amazon, how can we help people with tools like Q to get more value in more of their day actually delivering code innovation? And that's why we have the Amazon Q developer product. And our vision here is for Amazon Q to be an expert that helps developers with all the facets of their job, help them work across the entire software development lifecycle, not just with coding recommendations, but also helping you plan features, implement features, refactor existing code, perform upgrades, understand existing code. Amazon Q is a deep, deep expert in AWS, and we've trained it with 15 years of our best knowledge and insights and experience running and operating AWS at scale. It's also an expert at pretty much every other technology in the world also, including live up-to-date knowledge that we constantly are feeding into it, so it's always up to date. And we always want to build responsibly and help you build responsibly and securely. And so Amazon Q Developer has best-in-class security vulnerability scanning and remediation guidance. Now, Amazon Q, again, it's built for security and privacy in mind for the start, making it easier for an organization to really adopt generative AI without worrying about their code going to some vendor over the internet, getting the best custom recommendations on their code base, but securely for that enterprise. So even largest and most secure organizations can take advantage of Amazon Q. Now, I want to hit this thing also about across the entire SDLC, and I think that's appropriate for GitKon to not just focus on the coding part, but really focus on the whole life cycle. And there's this cycle, you've seen variations of this: planning, creating code, testing and securing, operating, maintaining, and modernize. Code has a long life to it. So, planning it thoughtfully, best practices, optimization, explaining code that's there, writing documentation. This is all sort of part of planning. But then also the creative task of actually writing the code inline. You might be writing code through the CLI, having that expert software development expert with Q to advise you, having a conversation with it, give you advice, riff on ideas, explore options, put those options in a markdown file for you to explore in the future as an option or other scenarios to evaluate. Writing unit tests, doing security scanning, remediation, that security phase, because your code's not done just when it's written. It has to be secure, it has to have great test coverage, it has to be merge ready. And then finally, operations. And there are a lot of surprises in operations. You might have picked a set value for a scaling parameter rather than auto scale as a cost optimization, but then learned that is a challenge you want to remediate in the future at ops time and either increase the scale or decide you're going to move to an auto scale configuration. Real runtime issues that matter, like VPC reachability, we have capabilities like that. Understanding cost, maybe optimization of code or optimization of costs. And then finally, the whole life cycle of that code, where you might have a large Java application. We have a really large Java fleet here, and we've used Q Developer's code transformation feature to modernize a very large Java fleet, saving us tens of thousands of developer hours moving thousands of applications to a more modern Java runtime environment. So as we look further, it's really beyond just that inner loop tactile and developer task kind of view of the world. And we really see promise of GenAI shaping across the whole SDLC, and not just at human-driven steps, but actually more agents that will work as part of your team, taking on tasks, either with direction for you or fully autonomously to help make the SDLC better. So this is a pretty big vision. And we're pretty clear where it starts because we're shipping those features now in Amazon Q, but we're super excited to see where it goes. And GitKraken and others are really going to push the envelope forward of what state of the art means and just how more of these agents will deliver more value helping developers. So developers, I'm telling you, you see the word agent now, and it feels like a feature in the tool, but very quickly it may feel like a set of teammates that you're working with helping you do your job. So let's show you some more demos of what we mean and start to see some of this agent behavior in the advanced capabilities of Q. So we're running a fun game builder challenge, a hackathon for developers, where all you have to do is build a game in AWS, use Q to help you do it, and compete for some cool prizes. So we thought that was fun, so we sort of been trying this out for fun to learn how Q would work for builders and give you some tips and things. So I wanted to share one of the techniques I've been working with Q to help me over the entire software development lifecycle. So what I did was actually took the judging criteria and I copied and pasted that, and I put that into the /dev command in Q, the software development agent, and I told it to come up with ideas for the game and with some evaluation criteria and put that in a markdown file. So basically it's doing planning for me. It's not actually coding yet, but we're using Q to help us with the planning phases of a project. We sped it up a little bit here, but here you can see a bunch of game ideas. So we've got the neural network, shapeshifters quest, but this time threads looks fun. Let's go ask Q to help us implement that game. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to create user stories in a system architecture for the time threads game. So it's still more planning. We're not writing code yet, but we're telling it roughly the architecture we want with the TypeScript backend on Lambda and using SAM and TypeScript on the front end also. And now it's going to go off and describe, and now it's going to go off and create another markdown file, which is the architectural approach it's going to take. User story, like the game mechanics, the API routes, what the Dynamo tables will look like, all the deployment stuff. Really neat. This is like a good starting point. Again, working on requirements and technical architecture in sort of that planning phase of the life cycle of a software development project. So let's keep going. Now let's ask Q to take that and go start implementing the game. So create the code for the game, including the necessary build files and everything needed for local development, including the SAM template. So now Q will go off and build the entire game. The front end, the back end, the IC, Q will go work on all those pieces aligned with the requirements. This is pretty cool. There's my infrastructure as code, my SAM configuration, my front end code, my back-end code. This is a really great starting point for me to accelerate my project. And one other thing that's cool, yeah, it looks like it's got what I need. And one other thing that's cool is our AWS Toolkit has application builder functionality. So actually down here, I can go down and run and test my Lambdas locally so I can test out and make sure my game is coming together. Super productive environment to start from ideation planning, assist with code generation and scaffolding your project, and then actually running the tests and starting to put all the pieces together to get to a killer game. So let's show you another way that Q Developer is really helpful in day-to-day development. So one thing that's pretty common is I write some code, I go to do a git merge, and then I sort of discover that another developer has made different changes and there's a conflict. And here I can see one of us added the year range field and the other one added the color field. And this is the kind of thing that's just kind of annoying and slows you down. So Q's got a pretty cool feature where I can just highlight that code and pop up the command merge conflicts command, and it will help me sort this out. It'll go through and it'll look at the two different commits and merge them and come up with a combined merge that's both the year range and the color fields in it, which I can then just accept, and I've resolved the problem. Pretty helpful in day-to-day. Again, it's our approach of Q helping you over the whole software development lifecycle with your day-to-day work. Hopefully you thought those demos were pretty exciting and you're starting to see the flavor of just where agents are going and how capable they're going to become. And it kind of begs the question I think every developer is wrestling with right now, which is sort of like, what's next? Not just what's next for the technology, but like what's next for me as a developer? Is Is my job changing? Is my day-to-day changing? The tools are getting so capable. What's my role, and am I learning enough fast enough? Am I now more directing or quarterbacking or choreographing these agents? The role is kind of changing. It's a little bit unsettling. So I'd like to look at another moment in time where a lot of smart people like you were pretty surprised and a little bit uncertain of what the future brought. And that's when the physics community discovered in the early days of quantum chance and quantum mechanics. And this is pretty disruptive to the physics community, a totally different model of the world, and definitely drove a lot of uncertainty. And Einstein said, I, at any rate, am convinced that he does not throw dice in 1926. And it was a pretty uncertain moment. If we have this understanding of physics, and it was really clear how things were going to work and run, and we had good understanding of the model, and it was deterministic. It was very certain. It was very deterministic. And we hit this world that suddenly it was stochastic and uncertain. It was chance. It was dice. And that is pretty surprising. But that uncertainty and that stochastic behavior is also what gave us amazing inventions like this one that you live with every day, that you're probably looking at a screen packed with right now, which is the transistor. 1947, so 21 years later from that quote. And transistors, despite relying on stochastic quantum effects, actually are what give us deterministic computers and light-emitting wells in the LED screens we're looking at it. So sometimes amazing deterministic behavior that we can really wrap our head around and channel and put to work, like the world has put transistors to work, comes out of this uncertainty and comes out of stochastic things, like this world of LLMs and generative AIs. And I think that's the moment we're at right now as developers, that all this uncertainty and new tools, and they work in unfamiliar ways, and we have to learn new things, really just means we're at the invention of the transistor again. And all of our jobs are now to take those incredible capabilities like LLMs and Amazon Q and other technologies and channel them and put them to work. And so I would offer this. I think it's a question where all of us as developers, we see these new disruptive technologies. Is it a moment of fear, or is it a moment where we go in fearlessly? Our vision at AWS is that we give these amazing tools, we build predictable agents, we put them in the hands of developers, we listen really thoughtfully to the feedback on developer experience and what the tactile experience of working with these tools and to ship products like we do with tens of thousands of engineers every day. We'll learn together and we'll help all be fearless and build even more innovation faster. We have an amazing community. This community is our guide. They are very honest with us. There are thousands of user groups and community members and heroes around the world with almost 1 million members. They give us amazing feedback from what those developers are seeing in the places they work and the schools they go to and the things they're experimenting with. And we feed that back into everything we do. And that's really driving us forward. So I would ask, if nothing else, I hope all of you that use AWS will join the AWS community and feel like you're part of it and really give us that feedback and deeply connect with us and your peers. And with that, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak at GitKon. I'm Adam Seligman at AWS. Super exciting to be here. Glad we could share what we're working on. And thanks very much for the invitation, and great to talk to you all today.